We are becoming more vulnerable by removing these natural stressors. Our bodies work in a use it or lose it capacity. So every time we do these little challenges and we build back stronger, we create the buffer, but the opposite happens when we don't challenge our bodies and we give in to the comfort. Our bodies are so vulnerable that is creating our risk for mental illness, our risk for anxiety, our risk for depression, our risk for Alzheimer's, our risk for every chronic disease. So the short-term discomfort leads to long-term benefit. Giving in to the short-term comfort leads to much harder lifelong long-term. So we've got to think of this as playing the long game.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. Right away, I'm going to give you the reason that you need to stick around through this entire discussion. We will broach the subject of, does stress actually help prevent Alzheimer's? That right there. The entire reason that I'm here doing this podcast is to help you prevent chronic disease and Alzheimer's, like it happened in my life and robbed me of my mother. And I have a doctor on the show that is going to change the way that we think about it. And it's not that we're wrong. It's not that you need to have constant negative stress, but what if there is stress in your life that could actually help prevent cognitive decline and chronic disease like diabetes? That's just one of the things that we're going to talk about with Dr. Sharon Bergquist. She's a board-certified physician, researcher, and pioneer in lifestyle medicine. She's used nutrition, exercise, stress management, and daily habits to help people take control of their health. Major clinical trials she has done on lifestyle interventions and early disease detection, and it's all in her new book. It's called The Stress Paradox. She reveals how stress can actually help us live longer and healthier. Her expertise has been featured on Good Morning America, CNN, NPR, The Wall Street Journal. And if you didn't need any more reason to listen, she's a graduate of Yale and Harvard Medical School. She's been on faculty at Emory University since 2000, and she is recognized as one of Atlanta's top doctors. Get ready. It's a great conversation. Stay with us. There's so much more to come. I'm super into the research right now when it comes to creatine and collagen. In fact, let's talk creatine for a second. And the one that I trust happens to be Ancient Nutrition. Research shows that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men, which means we're ideal candidates for it. And collagen we know is important not only as a protein, but it's also great for joint health. And I've been feeling the joints a little bit more. I'm in my 40s. I have that cold shoulder, women's 40 thing, that there's a lot of different things we can do, but it's really important to pump up your collagen. So I'm doing the two together, collagen and creatine, and there's actually a new product from Ancient Nutrition that puts the two of those together. Creatine is one of the most clinically studied supplements, and it's a game changer for women's wellness. It supports cognitive health. That's what I love the most about it. Muscle endurance and recovery, and it helps you build long, lean muscles and strength while staying sharp. And then you pair that with clinically studied collagen, which is what we get from all of our Ancient Nutrition products, and that can help you improve your joint comfort, your mobility, and your recovery. I take it right after a workout in the morning, and I still also love multi-collagen proteins and those peptides in my coffee every morning as well. So support your brain and your body and your beauty every single day with Ancient Nutrition so you can look toned, you can feel strong, and you can stay sharp. Here's what you do. You go over to ancientnutrition.com and put in the code STRESSED20. That's STREST20, STRESSED20 at checkout, and you'll get 20% off site-wide. Get your collagen, get your creatine, get your Ancient Nutrition. Dr. Bergquist, I am so excited about this conversation. Thank you for being on StRest.
I am so excited to be here. I love the mission and the messages that you share on this podcast. So it's an absolute delight to be a part of it.
I know that we're going to get into your backstory and your background and your book, The Stress Paradox, which is very, very important work. But I want to ask you right off the bat, for just personal reasons and for everybody listening, are we getting it wrong when we think about stress as good and bad?
I think we're getting it partially wrong. There's certainly a lot of harm to stress. I think what is not being told and what I hope we bring to light is the other half of the story. Really, the ways that stress is truly a transformation tool, and that has gotten lost in how we communicate and talk about stress.
And how do we do that? So for instance, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast recently talking about childhood trauma and the stress of that and how that impacts you. How do you think of that? And how do you address that in your book and in your work?
Childhood trauma is major adversity, and we know that there are epigenetic changes to the way our DNA gets expressed, even in our adult life, as a result of that early trauma. But what I address in the book is a set of tools that give us agency and give us the power to change our future brain. So what has happened to us in childhood is really something that we cannot control. It's a part of our past. We can choose our stressors so that we can shape shift our future brain to be a more resilient brain. And that is entirely in our control. And the book goes through the types of stress that can help us regain that control and change the way our minds process that stress.
I think some people watching or listening might say, well, you don't know me. Like I tend towards depressive. I'm never going to get through this. But what you're saying is, no, everybody can do this. Is that right?
Resilience is a muscle, and we all have it built into our DNA to build that muscle if we do it in a strategic way. And there's no question we all come at it from a different place, but we can start where we're at and just take on the types of stressors that we're capable of until we build that muscle. So there's no question that we are going to be at different starting points. I mean, that's true of anything in life. If you're going to start a workout routine, there are people who are already fit. They can go to the gym. They're not going to hurt themselves. And then there are people who just have to start with any starting point. It could be just walking in the door. And we have to view resilience in that same capacity where, yes, our starting points are different, but we all have this ability to become a more resilient individual. We all have this ability to step into our power.
Tell me how you got into this. What is your background and why should we listen to you about stress?
Yeah, so I am an internal medicine physician. I've been in clinical practice for 25 years. I also do research, and I have pioneered what's called lifestyle medicine in our academic center. So a lot of the work I do is on preventing disease, on extending our longevity, and how to just improve our day-to-day lives, the quality of our lives, our energy, our mood, how we feel. And across the country, when you look at statistics, 60 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related illness.
So true.
And it is not given equal weight in the health system because we can measure your blood sugar. We can measure your blood pressure. And I think things that are measurable are the things we focus on because they're just so concrete and, we can adjust them. We can give people a pill. But the work that I do is not centered around prescribing medication. It's on how to de-prescribe it, how to create a body that does not end up needing that kind of treatment. It's centered around lifestyle. And you absolutely cannot get to that healthiest state unless you address every aspect of our being, including our emotional being, our spiritual beings, as well as our physical beings.
But doesn't it show up in blood work or in tests or in chronic disease when you have an excess amount of stress?
Not at an early stage. And that's really the key. We don't
Yeah.
want to wait until it shows up as heart disease. We don't want to wait until it shows up as high blood pressure and the various ways it manifests. It can show up as migraines. It can show up as stomach, deterioration, immune system dysfunction. The key here is to think about this as a preventive approach to these downstream manifestations. And a lot of that is something that, we can look at in a research level. I mean, that's some of the work that I do. We have tools in the research spectrum that we simply just don't have available in the clinical space that we can offer everyone. But we can identify things earlier in that research perspective. And there are some ways we can do it clinically. We have tools like C-reactive protein that measures inflammation, but it's still a very blunt instrument. So I don't think we're very good at catching it early.
So let's say, by the way, you sound like the unicorn doctor that we all want because you're looking at it holistically and asking the right questions, most likely. And you're probably spending more than 6 minutes with your patients.
Yes.
We
No
would all love
question.
to see you. But let's say we have a woman in midlife. Let's say she's 50 and she's coming in and she's starting to show signs of chronic illnesses and she's not sleeping and maybe it's weight gain. And, obviously we know there's hormonal aspects to that as well. But she's probably caring for aging parents and she's also caring for children who may are just getting out of the nest or have already out of the nest. What do you do? How do you address this?
Yeah, Kerstin, that's such a great question because that is the common scenario in my practice, right? That's everyday life. And I think you can address it in really two ways. One is to look at the stressors on your plate and just seeing, what is absolutely necessary, what can you control or curb. That is the classic stress management. It's, what do you say no to? What do you say yes to? What I focus on with my patients is not just doing that, because I think that that's just maybe, I think half of the approach. It's how do you build your resilience against the stress so that you don't fear it and that you welcome it into your life as a means of becoming the person you want to be, the mother you want to be, the daughter, the sister. How are you strengthened and how does it transform you? And a lot of that work is a mindset work. Because you have to think about stress differently.
Okay, so how do we do that? Because that's it exactly. I think we spend a lot of time, especially on this podcast, talking about, okay, make space for rest, make space for connection to other humans and your Jesus or your spiritual practice, taking things off of your plate, turning off the phone an hour before bedtime. Those types of things. So the stress busters, right? But where is this piece where, okay, but we have to have the right stress, the right resilience, and the mindset? How do we do that?
Well, first start by saying that there is such a thing as good stress. So that is a concept that I think is going to gain in familiarity because there's a science of good stress called hormesis. It's from the Greek word to excite. And it's the recognition at the cellular level. So what's happening underneath the surface in our bodies that occurs when we get the right amount of stress and the right kind of stress. And we do it in a way that we strategically recover. And that is what strengthens us. So what I work with on my patients is incorporating these types of stressors. They're the type we're adapted for. This is based on the miraculous way our human bodies work and how we can respond to the right types of stress. There are 5 main types that I use to help people build that resilience. And I will say that we're not just building resilience, we're building anti-fragility. And the difference is with resilience, we think of how do we just bounce back from stress? How do we just learn to handle stress better? What I'm talking about with anti-fragility is that after the stress exposure and the period of recovery, when our bodies have had a chance to reconfigure and remodel as a result of that stress, that we are actually stronger. We are more capable. We have the infrastructure with the wiring in our brain, with how our human circuits are working, where we can buffer a higher amount of stress in the future. So every stressor that is the right kind of stressor helps us handle future stress better. And that's anti-fragility. And that's what I want for everyone. That's what I work on with all my patients. Part of that is we can use biological stress to build our mental and emotional resilience. And that's something that we don't do enough of. We think of all stress management as, how do I calm my busy mind? We don't think of it as, how do we use our bodies and the biological exposure so that we are training our brains to handle a stress state better. One familiar way we do that is exercise. We all know that exercise is hard on our bodies. It actually creates inflammation. If we're lifting weights, we are actually creating micro tears in our muscle. And it's in the period of recovery that the muscle builds back stronger. That applies to every part of our human body. And the really, really cool thing is when you drill down to the level of our cells, we realize that every time we go through a biological stress like exercise or even the certain foods we eat that include plant chemicals, at the level of our cells, that stress is repairing DNA. That stress is improving how our proteins are functioning. It's recharging our mitochondria. And why that matters is that when our cells are healthier, whether it's a muscle cell, a heart cell, however we're stressing it, it helps the cells in every part of our body. So our brain cells are healthier. We're clearing out the damaged components in our neurons. We are making them function in a higher way with a higher energetic state. So our decision making is better. Our mood is better. How we just handle and approach any situation in life is better. So this is root cause when you're drilling down to the most fundamental unit in our body, which is our cells.
So I call it stress build to stress bust. And it's those things that you're talking about, like lifting weights.
Yeah.
Exactly like you said, you're actually stressing the muscle, but it's building the muscle and it's making you stronger. I would say other ones are hot and cold therapy, correct? And what else? What else are we talking about in this area?
Yeah. So, exercise is the quintessential one that always comes to mind because we have an understanding of that. Interestingly, plant chemicals, the phytochemicals in plants, work in a similar way. They gently stress our bodies in a way where they activate these stress responses. There are 7 cellular stress responses that repair our DNA. They repair our proteins. They do a process called autophagy, which is recycling old and damaged cells. They moderate inflammation in our body. They raise our antioxidant defenses, and they recharge our mitochondria through this sirtuin response. And plant chemicals are actually the key that unlocks that ancient wisdom that is already in our bodies. The reason for that is over time, like when our ancestors were in the hunter-gatherer days, the threat of starvation was the biggest threat to our existence as humans. So people who could eat the most diverse types of edible food had the greatest chance of survival. A lot of plant foods are simply toxic to us. So our bodies developed ways where that stress would actually heighten our responses to become stronger against that type of plant food. And the reason plants even make the phytochemicals is because they were under stress in their environment. Sunlight, drought, um, insects, us as humans try and eat them. So these phytochemicals are the natural pesticides in the plants. So the plant stress response end up gently stressing us. And that actually works on our natural built-in way to defend against disease. And I love that because that is such a simple everyday thing we can all do. add a fruit or vegetable to our plate. Something that simple is enough to start activating these cellular stress responses. The heat and cold you mentioned works in a very similar way. When our bodies are exposed to extremes of heat or extremes of cold, that same defense mechanism kicks in because our bodies like to go to this natural balance state that we call homeostasis. It is really the balance in our body that orchestrates health. And when anything disrupts that natural balance, which essentially any stressor does, be it an extreme of temperature, we have these incredible built-in feedback mechanisms that fight so hard to bring us back to that natural balanced state of homeostasis. And that is the process that activates all these stress responses. Our bodies are trying to restore health. So it's incredible how our bodies were never designed for these indoor air conditioned, heat controlled environments that we take as the norm. I mean, this has really been in the last 200 years since the Industrial Revolution that we have had like climate control. And our bodies have come to actually depend on these types of stress for us to be our healthiest selves. And we underestimate how much we've removed these challenges that we have grown to depend on to do so much of this natural healing and natural repair. And I think that that removal of these natural challenges is leading to so much of the disease. And I see every day these epidemics of diabetes, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, heart disease. And we have to really look at what is our natural design? How do we support our body's built-in ability for health? And to work with our bodies in a way that harmonizes and integrates how we function best, right? Like there's so much about biohack this and biohack that. And it's like we need to outsmart our bodies with, some eh, little short circuit pathway that someone's discovered. And the goal isn't to biohack, it's to harmonize, it's to respect the natural rhythm and to work with our bodies. And in order to do that, we have to understand how our bodies work down to the, level of our cells. And we have to respect and honor and celebrate what we're naturally capable of doing.
Go back to that piece, Alzheimer's, diabetes, because those can be connected. Can stress help? Because my whole path has been, I saw my mom destroyed, her brain in part destroyed by maybe what we would call negative stress. I don't know. I
Yes.
don't think it was necessarily the good stress that she was under, if there is good and bad. But you're saying it can actually help prevent things like Alzheimer's and diabetes. Tell me about that.
This is what comes down to what is considered good stress, what is considered harmful stress. So there's no question that chronic stress, which is now so prevalent in our lives, can increase the risk of Alzheimer's. We have receptors in our brain and our hippocampus, which is our memory center for cortisol. And when those receptors are bound in an excess amount, it can actually shrink that part of our brain. So there's a biological reason why chronic stress, the harmful, unrelenting type, can affect our cognitive function. But good stressors are actually making our cells healthier. When I use the word stress, I'm using it in a very broad sense. It is anything that challenges our body. It could be biological, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. It can be any physical stressors. The physical stressors that we're talking about, the heat, the cold, the exercise, the plant chemicals, they are activating responses in our bodies that help us heal. So at the level of our neurons and our brain cells, they're clearing out damaged proteins that are clumping that lead to the plaques and tangles that create Alzheimer's dementia, for example. They are activating growth factors such as brain-derived neurotrophic factor that help us create new brain cells and improve the connectivity between our brain cells. They are repairing the DNA so our cells function better. They're improving the energy base so our cells can actually make the energy they need to do their critical function. And that controls our memory. That controls how we process information. There's no question these biological stressors can be used to build resilience, even against the chronic stressors that we can't always control. So it's so important to separate out what is a healthy, beneficial stress from these chronic stressors. And even within the realm of psychological stress, the types that help us grow our brain cells and improve the connectivity have essentially two key components. One is their dose. So everything that you talked about, like childhood adversity, these are overwhelming stressors. There are stressors that kind of almost exceed our human capacity to deal with at a long term, and that's why they're harmful. When we are stressed in a mild to moderate way, so let's say there's a deadline you have to meet tomorrow, like an everyday challenge,
Yeah.
some new tool or app that you download and you have to figure out how it works. These everyday challenges are more mild to moderate. These challenges actually build connectivity in our brain. They create, if you think of your brain as, if you're not challenged, you're like an old DSL network. And the more you challenge your brain, you become like this 5G network where you're crisscrossing different pathways. And that unleashes this incredible creativity, this ability that you may not have even realized that you have. And every time you do these mild, moderate stressors and then recover, it's actually in the recovery that the brain starts to create these pathways, make the connections for days and months after the stress exposure. Your brain is actually reconfiguring so that if it's exposed to that same stress in the future, it can handle it better. So you're kind of microdosing stress to build this highly, incredible computer in your mind that works like this 5G network. So the dose is a really, really critical part of it. And the other is the type of stress you choose to take on. Good stresses are deliberate, meaning that you can choose the stress. The harmful stressors, the chronic stressors, are generally ones that we have no sense of control over and that we essentially can't feel a sense of mastery around. The good stressors, by nature, they're deliberate, and we can choose them to be ones that align with our values. They align with our sense of meaning and with our sense of purpose. And that's where the power is. We've done research on purpose as a protective factor against so many aspects of our health. For example, as part of this healthy aging study that I help lead, we have looked at purpose in life as a predictor of cognitive decline. And we've used machine learning algorithms, which are essentially AI, where we put in everything we know that can impact cognitive function. Things such as a family history of dementia, whether a person exercises, whether they do enriching activities, whether they have purpose in life, whether they have medical problems, whether they have anxiety and depression. And what is so profound is this purpose in life was the second biggest predictor of cognitive decline. It came right after depression. It far outpaced family history. It outpaced exercise. It outpaced what medical problems you have. So when you choose good stressors that align with purpose, it has such a protective factor. And of course, it's going to be hard. Of course, it's going to be stressful. But you cannot separate a life of meaning from a life of stress, and we don't have to fear that type of stress. So this differentiation is so critical in how we utilize stress and how we learn to reduce the types of stress that harm us, but incorporate the types of stress that build us.
Fascinating. And I love it. I love the purpose conversation too. I've noticed, at least in my own life, I was in a corporate job. It wasn't a bad job, but I felt myself stressed out, burned out. I liked it to an extent, but I didn't really feel like I was in my purpose. I left a corporate job to go and really truly follow purpose and what the Lord was calling me to do without necessarily the paycheck that was be attached to it. And people say all the time, oh, are you so much more relaxed and less stressed because you're not in that corporate job? And the answer is honestly no, because I'm hustling like crazy and I'm working my buns off to get, a business that is revolving around purpose going. But I'm so much more happier and fulfilled, and I don't feel the impact of the stress because it's a stress that I'm choosing. Is that what you're saying?
100%, Kirsten. You are really hitting at the heart of when stress heals and leads to transformative growth and when stress harms. In a corporate job, for every person it's different, but oftentimes there's an agenda, a protocol, a set of initiatives that are given, and they don't always align with why we feel we are on this earth. The most fascinating thing that I will put this in a context of is a clinical study that came out in June in this journal called Health Psychology, where they looked at cumulative life stress. So stress since childhood, including childhood adversity, financial hardship, relational types of stress throughout a person's life. And they looked at how stress impacted aging. And you would think that, there'd be a clear correlation. And there wasn't. When you looked at people who didn't have purpose in life, the cumulative stress led to accelerated aging. When you looked at purpose in life, there was no impact. I mean, profound. The protective effect of having purpose buffered high levels of cumulative life stress. Our bodies are actually designed for meaning. We are designed to do things that are purposeful. And we have been given this protection at the level of our cells to do that type of work. And we can lean into it. Like, this work gives us permission to do exactly what you are doing. You can go hard, you can stress, but not for the sake of being tough, or having grit. This is stress in a way that helps you fulfill essentially what you're here to do. And when you do that, you emerge stronger. It helps you step into your power. And through the science of good stress, we actually know that you have the capability of improving your human potential 60 to 90% through these patterns of stress, recover, repeat, stress, recover, repeat. That's doubling your human potential, what you're capable of doing. And most of us are leaving so much on the table because we're so busy avoiding stress, curbing it, saying no to so many things. And what I really think we need to do is differentiate exactly what you just did. What is the stress that burns me out, that leaves me unmotivated, blah, fatigued, can't shake it?
Angry, maybe, upset, dissatisfied, discontent in life.
There's an inner knowing that we all have. And most of us just tune it out because we are so busy doing we should be doing this, or this is what is expected of us. And when you tune into what it really is that we're here to be doing, the types of stress that call to us are the ones that energize, they motivate. You want to have a reason for getting out of bed in the morning. And I think these are the stressors that actually make us healthier. I mean, we have done clinical trials where we have looked at stress and resilience, okay, because you have to look at the two together. I mean, this is really what we've added to the literature. And we've done it on executives. I lead, I'm a medical director of an executive health program. We take care of executives that are at the senior level of global companies. And they are all stressed. Of course, it comes with the job. We have looked at the impact of stress on their rate of aging. We have measured resilience and stress at a biological level, through blood samples in a more concrete way. And we see a full spectrum of effect. It is not monotone, higher level of stress leads to more aging. If anything, we have found that when people have that moderate amount of stress, they age at a slower rate than the people who have like no stress, that have worked so hard to eliminate the stress. I mean, this is what's been so paradoxical in our research. And it is really the content of the book, which, is called Stress Paradox. And when you really drill down to talking to people, work for some people is what they find exhilarating. For some of my patients, that ability to impact a community, the service they provide, the mentorship is what energizes them. And for some, it isn't. It is a way to put dinner on the table. It is, it serves certain purposes that are very practical, but it doesn't feed their soul. And you see this divergent effect on how stress impacts their body.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good. All right, I'm always telling you to get your labs done, and I'm insisting that you get specific labs done. Now there's a place to get all of that done for $199. This episode of StRest is thankfully brought to you by Superpower. It's the membership that gives you real answers about your health. What you get with Superpower is 100+ lab tests every single year, and they check everything from heart health to hormones to inflammation, and it's just for $199. No fighting with your doctor, no fighting with insurance. It's a 15-minute lab visit. The labs are everywhere around the U.S. You get your results in about 5 days. And here's the biggest piece that I love is that you also get a dashboard that gives you ideas and recommendations based on your lab work for your diet, for your lifestyle, which supplements you should take, even prescriptions. Here's the absolute best part. 63% of members discover early risk factors for diabetes. 44% uncover elevated heart disease risk. And 70% slow their pace of aging. Superpower is giving you superpower. It's lab data for real life changes. Join today. Go to superpower.com/Kerstin. That's KERSTIN. Superpower.com/Kerstin. The name of the book is The Stress Paradox, and I highly recommend that you read it and learn these methods that Dr. Bergquist has to help you identify, build resilience, anti-fragility, which I love. I love that. When did it become that every single moment of stress turned into my child is missing or I'm being chased by a bear? For instance, you get stuck on the phone for an hour and a half with, Verizon, or your line at the DMV or there's other stressors in your life. I can't open this jar and then I stub my toe and our stress levels go high, and our bodies are meant to be able to, okay, quick stress. The child is now found. We're fine. We did that quick run to get away from the bear. We're now fine. But we keep it up here with a chemical reaction that isn't good on our bodies. Am I right in saying all of this?
Yes, but I would differentiate. My child is missing is, I would say, stress with a capital S.
Yeah.
The line at the DMV is stress with a small s.
Okay.
And our responses are actually different. When we have the capital S stress, my child is missing, I got to get my child out of a burning building. We all have the patterned fight or flight response. Mm-hmm. It is, our survival instinct. When we have the, stress at the DMV, the everyday stress, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm going to be late to picking up my child from carpool. We have such variation in how we respond to that stress. Our reactivity to the stress is different. How resilient we are in those situations are so different. And we can shape how we handle those stressors to a tremendous degree. The amount of individual variability is huge and broad. So that is what we're really focusing on. It's how do we handle everyday stress better? You put any one of us in that my child is missing, we're all human. We're all going to have that similar cortisol HPA axis. When you drill down to the different types of stress, what's fascinating is the biochemistry of the stress response is actually different. So when you are doing something stressful that is meaningful, you're not just releasing cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, you're also releasing dopamine. You're releasing oxytocin if it's helping you connect and contribute to something bigger than yourself. These other hormones that we co-release as part of that stress response are actually protective against the kind of more stress hormones that we associate as being harmful. So built into our stress response are protective mechanisms depending on the type of stress we are pursuing. So both at a chemical level as well as the type of stress, there's so many nuances to everyone picturing, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. That's not how our body responds in every situation.
Is it a difference between there being excitement in the stress and not? Because I would think, okay, I'm stressed out. I'm a doctor who's about to cure cancer. I'm stressed out. I'm working late. But there's also an excitement factor of it. Is that why there's the additional chemicals that come in?
That's exactly right. It's if I am working really late, and this has been something that's been studied in physicians. So physicians have always worked long hours. That's not new, but right now there's epidemic rates of burnout. Over 50% of US physicians are
I would assume.
estimated to be burnt out. So the question has emerged, like, what is different? I mean, we've always worked long hours. I've been in healthcare for 30 plus years, that's not new. But you just hit the nail on the head. It's how that time is spent. Right now, we do more work on electronic medical records. Sometimes, you click on something it didn't capture. You're trying to order something, and 20 minutes later, you still can't find what you need to order. The way the time is spent has changed. The amount of time directly with the patient doing the work that we love and is meaningful has reduced, and the time that we spend doing things that are like frustrating, mind numbing, you name it, have increased. It's how the time is being spent. So if I am very stressed taking care of someone who is dealing with cancer or terminal illness, there's such a buffering effect of that human connectivity and feeling that I can help this person die with dignity. That to me is very meaningful. Everyone is wired differently, but that is why I do the work I do. And for me, no matter how tired I am, how late I work, I feel the sense of energy because that fulfills what I want to be doing on this planet. But if you tell me stay late because now you've got to do all this paperwork and you got to deal with the insurance company and you've got to do this, I'm going to go home so drained and so depleted. So yes, it's how we spend the time, and you cannot remove some of the built-in stress. I mean, I think modern day, we've made so many things so complicated, and sometimes I wish we could turn back the clock. I mean, I
Don't
remember
we
when
all?
we could just, just kind of just tell our nurse what we needed done and it would just happen. Um, we can't undo some of this, and well, maybe slowly, optimistically, we can at least create efficiencies, but we can always deliberately add things that align with meaning. We can really search our soul and search our heart and focus on how do we add more of what energizes us instead of putting all of our energy into how do we remove the things that deplete us. I think if we simply approach it that way, I think the good drowns out the bad. And to me, one of the biggest sources of stress at a level of chronic stress that harms us, that leads to the Alzheimer's, is one that we underappreciate, and it's a values conflict stress. We're so busy at identifying external chronic stressors like the workload, the boss that is, very difficult to work with. Yes, we can identify external stressors. Do we turn it internal and say, how much malalignment or dyssynchrony do I have inside my body because what I do every day is not aligned with what my values are and what my heart and my soul are telling me are the things I need to be doing. That is perceived by our bodies as lying to ourselves, right? So we would never externally lie to people, but we do not hold ourselves to the same standard of doing that to ourselves as we do with how we treat other people. Our bodies perceive that dyssynchrony, that disconnect with how we spend our time and our values as lying. It triggers inflammation. That is such a smoldering, low grade, chronic stress that is so discounted. And I think that if we put energy into fixing that dyssynchrony, we would function at such a higher level. We would feel this greater sense of energy and it would protect us against disease and it would help us age better.
So is that the person who's saying, I have to stay in this job because, I've got to pay the bills, or it's what I've always done and I can't do everything else, or I need to continue to take care of my aging parent because I just have to and I'm supposed to, but not allowing there to be that part of your life that you're also finding purpose in? Is that the example that we're giving of the lying to yourself?
It, well, it is, I think that's exactly hitting at the heart of it. You cannot sometimes remove, you can't get rid of aging parents. You can't, you need to put bread on the table. You can't always remove it, but I think you can do some internal self-assessment of what brings you joy, what speaks to your heart. And instead of saying, one day I will do this, it's how do you make small, courageous, bold steps towards the things that are meaningful to you? And you can do them at the same time. It's really just saying, I value myself enough to carve out the time to do something that feeds my soul as you are giving and doing for others and contributing to whether it's the mission of work. And sometimes you can even find that meaning in your work. If you believe in women supporting women within your work, you can be a mentor to other women. If you believe in supporting, any initiative within a workplace that is one that really resonates with you, you can always just speak to your boss and say, can I do more work on this? Can I start a committee that focuses on this? Can I bring together a group of people that want to, put more emphasis on this component or this aspect? Sometimes you can create that in a work environment instead of being so passive and feeling that we cannot control any situation or environment. I think there's a lot to be said for being very active. Even within healthcare, I have chosen a path of incorporating lifestyle as medicine. It was an uphill battle. I've been doing this before the term was even, I think it's much more common today, but the uphill battles, the hurdles you have to fight, the way your colleagues just view you and think of you, these are not simple things that anybody does, but they were so integral to my worldview and into my just fundamental belief that we have to support and nurture our human bodies. And what I was taught to do, diagnose a problem, here's a drug for it. It just wasn't satisfying to me because even when I was doing that work, there was still so much human suffering. I wasn't changing the trajectory of humans' lives. So you're always going to meet resistance, but you have to think, what do you want to do? And even incorporate it into your work. And it started off with resistance. It led to us designing within a very traditional healthcare setting a pathway where we created a lifestyle medicine program. It led to recognition at a national level. It led to more research. It led to philanthropic support, which has really supported a lot of the research that I do. It has led to so many ways I've been able to impact. Yes, it's hard. Yes, there's resistance, but there's no way to get to the other side of the people we want to be, the life we want to live, unless we meet that resistance and just know that we have the tools built into our DNA to handle those challenges.
So well said. And that's also where your faith comes in, whatever your faith is. Because what Dr. Bergquist is talking about takes a lot of trust and not necessarily seeing what's going to happen next. If you're that person who was like, but I need to know where the paycheck is coming from, but I need to know how this is going to turn out. Sometimes to do the work in order to build resilience, anti-fragility, decrease the quote unquote negative stress, it takes faith in something bigger than you.
It takes that faith, and every time you do one micro stress that aligns with what you believe in, you build self-trust, you build self-confidence. So even if you do not know where the path is taking you, you are becoming a more powerful person. And I use that word power in a very positive light because it helps you gain the confidence of how you can impact other people's lives. It is not a type of power that I think we use over people. It's the type of power that builds up and raises others with us. And you are building that muscle. That's really what we're trying to do. And you don't have to have the answers of where it's taking you. But when you trust that you have got what it takes to do the work that is your work by building that self-trust and that self-confidence, that in itself gives us the tools we need to make the difference we want to make and to ultimately make a living out of doing what we love doing.
Yeah, so true. I want to backtrack just a little bit. We were talking about my mom and Alzheimer's and good and bad stress in those cases in chronic disease. What role does fasting play in all of this?
Fasting, first of all, can mean a lot of different things. And
Mhm.
when I use the word fasting, I mean it to be anytime you go more than 12 hours without eating, your body switches, it metabolically actually switches from burning glucose and sugars for energy to burning fat for energy. Ketones, a form of fat that we use in the fasted state, is a signaling molecule. Signaling molecules are messengers, and they send out the message to our entire body that we are in a stressed state. Hunker down, start to build resilience. And that is what turns on these repair and housekeeping functions that we're talking about at the level of our cells. So we start the repair, we start building up our mitochondria so we can process energy more efficiently the next time it's available. And then when we eat, we help our bodies build stronger cells. We are in a more efficient state. And as we do this in a repeat pattern, so on a daily basis, if we time restrict our eating to going more than 12 hours overnight without eating, and then preferentially building stronger cells, we're actually taking out like what's gumming up our cells, all that, buildup of, the proteins that are damaged, all the DNA that's damaged. And we are creating these highly efficient cells, highly functioning cells, which translates to becoming, again, this resilient person that we want to be, the healthier person. So to me, fasting is such a natural state. I don't really like the term fasting because what I'm describing is actually normal eating. What we do today, eating 15 hours a day, is the abnormal state. So a lot of what I'm advocating for is stress is really doing what our bodies are adapted to do, what our bodies need? What is the normal state? I think we lose the perspective that how we're living today is the abnormal state. And we need to course correct to create this normal state for us so our bodies have the chance to do the housekeeping, the repair that we're really designed to need to create a balance, to balance out all the stressors that are harming us, be it processed food, be it pollution, be it now microplastics, chronic stress, loneliness, you name it. We have this innate ability to repair a lot of that damage if we live our lives in this normal state. And going 12 hours without eating or a little bit longer is really this natural rhythm of stress recovery that honors our body, our innate intelligence, and the wisdom that is just so built into our being.
It's amazing if we take, the 100-foot view of it, if we pull back and take a look. By trying to make our lives less stressful and all of these modern conveniences, just like you were talking about with the doctors now having to do everything online and figure out this app and how do we upload this and all that, supposed to make things easier. And by having the air conditioning and the heater and having the refrigerator and everything that's supposed to make our lives easier, it's actually made it harder on our bodies because we aren't stressing ourselves in the right ways anymore. So if we could go back to, we didn't have food after we cooked it over the fire at 5 o'clock. Then there wasn't a refrigerator to go to and get snacks all night long. We had to deal with winter. We had to deal with summer and the heat and the cold and the temperatures there. We stopped working at 7 because the sun went down and we weren't on devices. Those types of stresses are actually really good for us. So we have, in this modern world, created a more stressful life by trying to make it less stressful.
We are becoming more vulnerable by removing these natural stressors. Our bodies work in a use it or lose it capacity. So every time we do these little challenges and we build back stronger, we create the buffer, but the opposite happens when we don't challenge our bodies and we give in to the comfort. We essentially are going back to this DSL network, right? Our bodies are so vulnerable that is creating our risk for mental illness, our risk for anxiety, our risk for depression, our risk for Alzheimer's, our risk for every chronic disease. So the short-term discomfort leads to long-term benefit. Giving in to the short-term comfort leads to a much harder life long term. So we've got to think of this as playing the long game.
On StRest, we talk a lot about supporting the systems in your life that hold you up, your habits, your routines, sleep, but that also includes your feet. Remember that song we used to sing, knee bone connected to the hip bone? That's not right, but you know where I'm going with this, right? It's all connected and it starts with your feet. And if you're like me, you probably sacrificed comfort to style more times than you can count. I was able to join Revitalign when I worked at QVC to create really, really great shoes, flip-flops, sandals for you for many years. And now they are a sponsor of StRest. I love this brand. My entire family wears them. It's all about aligning your body from the ground up, literally, but also doing it with super cute styles. I wear them around the house, on long days of filming, even traveling, of course, down at the beach. And the difference is my body feels better at the end of the day. And that's what I want for you as well. Going into a new season, make sure you get yourself new, good shoes. And we have a discount for you. Visit wacoshoecompany.com. That's WACO shoecompany.com and enter the code Kerstin, KERSTIN 20 for 20% off. Everything from really cute wedges to boots to sneakers. Get out there and get your sneakers. That's Waco Shoe Company, WACO shoecompany.com, and put in the code Kerstin 20, KERSTIN 20. So you get 20% off and support yourself from the ground up. To take a complete full circle back to where we started and the whole childhood trauma aspect too, where people kind of get, I don't know if the word is stuck or not, but get connected to life was so hard. How do I ever overcome that? I'm always going to be stressed out. Your story as well. I mean, you had a very traumatic event in your childhood. Can you give us a little peek into that?
Yeah. So I was born in Tehran, Iran, and we lived in Iran during the revolution. And due to, just persecution, we needed to flee. So in a very abrupt time frame, we had to immigrate and we came to the United States. And I think, people view life events very differently. I view this as one of the greatest gifts that happened. It created opportunities, but with that opportunity, there was a lot of hard. I started high school with, having a very hard time reading. And I could read, but just even writing a paragraph was challenging. And I finished valedictorian because to me, there was such a gift in the opportunity. So I've been very fascinated with what is it that helps some people really thrive in situations that can be stressful, and what is it that doesn't give people those tools. And that has led to a lot of my work. But I think so much of it is, what is your ultimate goal, right? You have to start with the mindset piece of, you know, how you view anything today is based on what your personal goals are. And I think I viewed this as a gift. I was full of gratitude at the opportunities that were available. As a woman, I probably would have never had a chance to go to college, let alone medical school, to have the freedoms that I did, to kind of live my life to, get promoted based on merit. These are just things that would not have happened for me. My life would have been dramatically different. And I think I viewed it as, this happened for a reason, and I was intended to give back in a way that these gifts of being given these opportunities have created for me. So for me, it was always this desire to do better, give more, give back. And I think that colors how any life situation is. I think sometimes it can be a tool. The mindset piece, I cannot emphasize enough. Um, Not only is it the mindset that you can become a different person, you can continually grow, but it's a mindset of how you view stress. There's now so much research that shows if you approach stress with a mindset that stress is harmful, that it can actually have a more negative effect on your health than the actual stress itself. And vice versa, if you view stress as something that is a challenge that can help you grow, that it's not there to harm, it can negate the effect of that stressor. I mean, there have been large studies that have found that people who view stress as harmful have a 43% higher likelihood of dying. People who live very stressful lives but do not view the stress as harmful, they view it as something that's beneficial, have a 17% lower rate of dying, even with a high stressful life. So this mindset shift is so critical. If people take nothing else away from our conversation than the mindset, if you can simply just not categorically view stress as harmful and look for ways that stress can help you grow and become the person you want to be and help you live to your potential, that mindset shift alone will have a dramatic impact on your health and your longevity.
It's so important, and it's what I pray for your book, which is the stress paradox. And I think that we're actually publisher sisters. I think we have the same publisher. You're HarperCollins, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. HarperCollins Zondervan. So, but I sometimes worry because I look at these books that are so important, like yours, The Stress Paradox, and even the name of this podcast, StRest, and I feel like people have a negative connotation of stress, and so they look at it and they don't even want to go there because they're like, well, I'm just overly stressed. I'm not even going to look at that because it's just going to make more stress. But if you change the mindset to, no, this is an opportunity. This is a way that you can build, and this is a path towards longevity, and it's a path towards joy and happiness. When you see that word, it won't be scary anymore, which I think is really important. What, as somebody who studies this, what are some non-negotiables that you have in your life then when it comes to health and wellness?
To me, the biological stressors are easy non-negotiables because they're so concrete. I can very easily add plant food. I have a very plant-centric diet. I do it for my whole family because I obviously want to nourish my kids and my husband and my family. The exercise, complete non-negotiable. It is probably the most potent way to heal ourselves. And it's exercise with intervals of intensity. So I make sure at least once or twice a week, I am doing something that is very hard and challenging for my body. To me, the fasting or not eating for 12 hours is also something that I can do on a daily basis, no matter how busy I am. The harder part are the components that touch to your values and feed your soul. And for me, I do so much reflection. And I view that as a non-negotiable, tuning into my body and listening to what my body is telling me at the level of just this gut feel of why am I, dreading something? Why am I excited about something? Really using that internal feedback to recalibrate my daily decisions and truly understand what I'm here to be doing. That is a non-negotiable, but it's hard work. I think that ability to tune into these internal signals and that gut feel and really pay attention to it and let it guide you is much harder than the more concrete non-negotiables. But because I so well know from my work and the impact that stress and connection has on health, that I think outweighs the physical components, like, the metrics that we measure, I put so much effort and time and energy into trying to do better with that piece and to be very honest with myself of asking the hard questions of, is what I did today, what I am doing this week, what I need to be doing to fulfill the message I'm here to give. It is
Great.
so hard to live to that, but I think it's a non-negotiable.
What a great question to ask yourself, though, every week. Maybe you do it at the end of the week. Maybe you do it before the start of a new week. Is what I'm doing this week, or what I did this week, integral? Am I fulfilling what I'm meant to be doing here? And I think that's a rough question to ask yourself, but it's an important one.
Yeah.
What's one thing do you think that all of our listeners and viewers could take away to help put themselves in this right relationship with stress today?
Yeah. I think you can start with taking the stressors that are the chronic stressors and really reflecting on, did that help you gain something that maybe you didn't give it the credit that it should? For example, if you had to deal with financial hardship, did you learn to budget better? If you were in a really difficult relationship, did you have those hard conversations that made you stand your ground and not be meek? Did it help you handle those situations better? Find things that you gained out of a difficult, stressful situation and build on that. And I think that starts to shift the mindset. It starts to give you the agency, that sense of power that you've got this and that you have the ability to do this if you build this resilience like the muscle.
I love it. Thank you so much for this conversation. Everybody go out and get the book. It's called The Stress Paradox. It is out, correct? Where can they find it?
Yes, it's out. The book is available anywhere books are sold, including independent and small bookstores. You can also find it through my website, drsharonbergquist.com. I'm on social media as the Good Stress Doctor on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn as Dr. Sharon Bergquist. And I also have a free newsletter that really drills into a lot of studies around this topic on just how to live vibrantly around longevity, how to optimize midlife. So please look me up, and I hope that people enjoy the content.
Can people actually work with you? Do you still take patients, doctor?
I do still see patients. So yes, I do it here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm based. So I don't have like a telehealth practice outside of the state. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I will put everything in the show notes so you can sign up for her newsletter, get the book, and just thank you for the work that you're doing. It was wonderful to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. I think it's so important to really spread the message of how important it is to manage the stress in our lives and do it in a way that gives us the rest and optimizes our lives. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Thanks, doctor. Coming up on the next episode of StRest, we are going to be hearing from Anna Runkle. Okay, I don't even like to say these words because it's not a word I usually say, but it's what she does. She is known as the crappy childhood fairy. I know, I said it, but it is. It's her YouTube channel, and she has helped hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have needed to overcome childhood trauma. Our topic of discussion is childhood trauma and how that leads to isolation and disconnection and dysregulation. And even those of you who maybe didn't have childhood trauma, these are methods that she talks about in her upcoming book that can help you be more connected and help you regulate your nervous system. It is some fantastic stuff. She found Jesus along the way, even in some of the most horrific circumstances in her childhood, even into her 30s. You're going to hear her stories, and we're going to learn from her. That's all coming up on the next episode of StRest. Please join us.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.